Hello. One of my heroes was a man named Robert Murray McCheyne. He was a minister in Scotland in the 1800s, one of the leading figures in the Scottish revival in the 1830s. He was a gifted Bible teacher and pastor. He was a man of prayer. He had a great gift of encouragement. Yet he died when he was just 29. William Cowper was one of the greatest hymn writers. We often sing his hymn, "Oh, for a closer walk with God." But Cowper suffered from crippling bouts of depression, sometimes lasting for years. Or closer to home, there's a very moving headstone in our churchyard. Matthew Fernley was the first rector of Christ Church, and 3 infant sons of his are buried there. Sometimes we look at the world and it is so beautiful. The poet Gerard Manley Hopkins wrote that the world is charged with the grandeur of God. But at the same time, the experience of McCheyne and Cowper and Matthew Fernley, and maybe your experience as well, says that all is not well with the world. Let me read Psalm 116. I love the Lord, for he heard my voice. He heard my cry for mercy. Because he turned his ear to me, I will call on him as long as I live. The cords of death entangled me. The anguish of the grave came over me. I was overcome by distress and sorrow. Then I called on the name of the Lord. Lord, save me. The Lord is gracious and righteous. Our God is full of compassion. The Lord protects the unwary. When I was brought low, he saved me. Return to your rest, my soul, for the Lord has been good to you. For you, Lord, have delivered me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before the Lord in the land of the living. I trusted in the Lord when I said, I am greatly afflicted. In my alarm I said, everyone is a liar. What shall I return to the Lord for all his goodness to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation and call upon the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful servants. Truly I am your servant, Lord. I serve you just as my mother did. You have freed me from my chains. I will sacrifice a thank offering to you and call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of all his people, in the courts of the house of the Lord, in your midst, Jerusalem. Praise the Lord. Yes, the world is beautiful, but it is also broken. It's there in verse 3. The cords of death entangled me. The anguish of the grave came over me. I was overcome by distress and sorrow. Even in the world which a good God has created, life can be like that. Maybe the psalmist was speaking literally. Perhaps he had been facing death. But more often those words apply to people metaphorically, don't they? The cords of death, the anguish of the grave, the things in life which spoil life as it should be and which cause distress and sorrow. Is there anyone listening to this who at some time hasn't felt a bit like that? So what do you do when faced with the brokenness of the world? Maybe in your own life, maybe in someone close to you, maybe as you see the devastation caused by COVID-19 on the news. How do you deal with it? For some people, their response is a sort of stoical acceptance. Keep calm and carry on. Others become angry, shouting at God or lashing out at those around them. Others become bitter as their suffering eats away at them. But Psalm 116 gives us a better response. Then I called on the name of the Lord. Lord, save me. No matter how dark our experience, we can cry out to God. And we can do it trusting his character. The Lord is gracious and righteous. Our God is full of compassion. And so, the Lord protects the unwary. When I was brought low, he saved me. Return to rest, my soul, for the Lord has been good to you. But if God is the God who saves us when we cry out to him, how come there is still so much suffering in the world? If, as verse 15 says, precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his faithful servants, if God takes the death of one of his children so seriously, if it is so precious or costly to him, why is life, even for Christians, sometimes so painful, so full of death and tears and stumbling? Why doesn't God always rescue his people from suffering? But maybe if we ask that question, it's because we have the wrong perspective. Because if we want to see God's answers to suffering, we have to look at Jesus. Jesus knew all about the suffering in the world. Throughout his ministry, he confronted sickness and oppression and even death itself. But more importantly, he experienced those things himself. On the cross, Jesus took on himself all the brokenness and sin of this world, and in his resurrection, he defeated it. And that means that those things can no longer have ultimate power over us. Yes, as God's children, we might still suffer now, but it will never be God's last word for us. We can look forward to that time when, as Revelation 21 says, there will be no more death or mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. So when we cry out to God to save us, his answer is, I already have. You just don't experience it fully yet. For you, Lord, have delivered me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling. That is something you can only say with the eyes of faith, but it is true. But that demands a response. Again, the person who wrote Psalm 116 understood that. What shall I return to the Lord for all his goodness to me? I will lift up the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. I will fulfill my vows to the Lord in the presence of his people. As you know, if you've been to one of our Passover meals at Christchurch, one of the cups of wine which we drink together is the cup of salvation. For the Jews, it was a way of identifying themselves with the great rescue from Egypt, the Exodus. By drinking it, they were saying, this is me. I am one of those rescued people. So to lift up the cup of salvation means to make that same personal commitment. It means following the Lord. For you, Lord, have delivered me from death, my eyes from tears, my feet from stumbling, that I may walk before the Lord in the land of the living. It means giving your life to him. Truly, I am your servant. God is the only one who can lift you out of the death, tears and stumbling which all of us face at some time. Sometimes he does wonderfully do it in the here and now, but whether he does that or not, you can know that Jesus has entered into tears, death and stumbling for you. And as you take hold of what he did in his death and resurrection, you can say, I love the Lord, for he heard my voice. He heard my cry for mercy.